Her husband died before she got off the train. Another cowboy met her anyway and took her in. She sat by the window of the train, watching the land stretch and change as the wheels moved forward without pause. Towns passed, fields opened wide and then disappeared again. The sound of the train was steady and loud, but inside her, everything felt quiet. She held her small suitcase close to her feet, afraid that if she let go of it, something else might slip away too. This journey was supposed to be the beginning of her married life, the start of a future she had imagined many times but had not yet lived. She had married him only weeks ago. It was a quick wedding, simple and small, done with more hope than certainty. They had known each other for a short time, but he spoke with confidence about the land out west, about the work, about the life they would build together. He left first, saying he would prepare a place for her. She trusted him. That trust was what carried her onto the train, alone but hopeful. In her coat pocket was a folded letter with directions written in careful handwriting. She had read it many times already, even though she knew the words by heart. Each time she read it, she imagined his voice saying those words to her. She pictured him waiting at the station, taller than she remembered, smiling when he saw her step down from the train. She practiced what she would say to him in her mind. None of it felt real yet. It would become real when she saw him. The train was crowded at first, full of noise and movement. Families talked loudly, children laughed, strangers argued over seats. But as the hours passed, the crowd thinned. People got off at different stops, taking their stories with them. Soon there were more empty seats than filled ones. The air grew quieter, heavier. She felt it in her chest, a strange weight she could not explain. She did not know that far ahead of her, life had already changed its direction. Her husband had reached the town days before. He worked where he could, eager to earn enough to start their home. The land was rough, the work demanding, and accidents were common. One moment of bad luck was all it took. His life ended suddenly, without warning, without goodbye. The men who stood around afterward spoke softly, unsure of what to do next. One of them remembered the young woman who was supposed to arrive by train. Someone needed to meet her, but the train did not know what had happened. It kept moving forward, carrying her closer to a truth she was not ready to hear. She adjusted her seat and looked out the window again. The sky was wide and pale. She wondered if he was looking at the same sky somewhere ahead, thinking of her. She smiled at the thought. Her heart was full of plans, small ones, simple ones, cooking meals together, working side by side, building something that belonged to both of them. She had never wanted much, just a place to belong. At one stop, the train slowed for water. She stepped down briefly to stretch her legs. The platform smelled of dust and iron. People hurried past her, each with their own purpose. She stood still, holding her coat tight against the wind. For a moment, she felt very small. Then she reminded herself that soon she would not be alone anymore. When the train moved again, she returned to her seat and rested her head against the window. Sleep came lightly, broken by thoughts and dreams that made little sense. In one dream, she stood on the platform calling his name, but he did not answer. She woke with a sharp breath and shook the feeling away. It meant nothing, she told herself, just nerves. As the final stop grew closer, the train filled again with noise. People gathered their bags, children were called back to their parents, conductors walked the aisle announcing the station. Her heart beat faster with every mile. She checked her appearance, smoothing her dress, fixing her hair with careful hands. She wanted to look right when he saw her. The train slowed. The sound of metal against metal screamed as it came to rest. Outside the window, she saw the station for the first time. It was smaller than she imagined, quieter too. Wooden buildings stood under the open sky, worn by wind and time. A few people waited on the platform. She searched their faces quickly, excitement rising in her chest. She did not see him. She stood up, lifting her suitcase with effort. Maybe he was running late, she thought. Maybe he stood just beyond her view. The train doors opened and warm air rushed inside. One by one, passengers stepped down. When it was her turn, she took a deep breath and followed. Her boots touched the ground. Dust rose around her feet. She looked again, more carefully this time. There were men in work clothes, women with tired eyes, children clinging to skirts. Then she saw a cowboy standing a short distance away, his hat held in his hands. He was not smiling. His eyes were fixed on her, not with curiosity but with something heavier, something that made her pause. She took a few steps forward, unsure. He walked toward her slowly, as if each step carried weight. She felt a strange cold move through her body, though the day was warm. He stopped in front of her and spoke her name. Hearing it from a stranger's mouth made her heart drop. She nodded, unable to speak. "I was sent to meet you," he said gently. Relief tried to rise in her, but it did not reach her eyes. "Where is my husband?" she asked. The cowboy did not answer right away. He looked down at the ground, then back at her. People moved around them, but suddenly it felt like they were standing alone in a wide, empty space. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low and steady. "He didn't make it." She did not scream. She simply stood there, staring at the man who had just ended the life she thought she was stepping into. The train pulled away behind her, carrying everything she used to be. She stood on the platform long after the train had gone. The sound of it faded into the distance, but her body did not move. People passed her, some careful not to look, others curious for only a second. To them, she was just another traveler who had arrived late or lost something important. None of them knew she had lost everything in a single sentence. The cowboy stayed where he was. He did not rush her, did not speak again right away. He understood that words could not fix what had just happened. The wind lifted dust around their feet and the sun hung high above them, bright and uncaring. Life in the town continued as usual. Somewhere nearby, a door closed. A horse stamped the ground. Normal sounds, all of them, and yet nothing felt normal to her anymore. At last, she bent down and picked up her suitcase. Her hands shook, and she had to pause before she could lift it fully. When she straightened, she looked at the cowboy again. His face showed no pity, only a quiet sadness that seemed honest. "I didn't know," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, thin and distant. "I know," he replied. "None of this is your fault." She looked around the station again, as if her husband might still appear, late and smiling, ready to explain that this was all a mistake. But the platform was nearly empty now. "I don't know what to do," she said softly. The cowboy shifted his weight. "You don't have to decide anything today," he said. "You've had a long journey." He was older than her husband had been, his face marked by sun and work. His clothes were worn but clean. There was nothing dangerous or hurried about him. Still, he was a stranger, and she felt the risk of that clearly. "Why did you come?" she asked. "He asked me to," the cowboy said. "We worked together. When it happened, someone had to be here when you arrived." Wooden buildings lined the main road, their paint faded by years of sun and wind. People glanced at them as they passed. Some nodded at the cowboy. A few looked at her with questions in their eyes. No one spoke. He led her to a quiet spot near the edge of town where a wagon was tied. A horse stood patiently, its head low. The cowboy set her suitcase into the back of the wagon without asking. She did not stop him. "I can take you somewhere to rest," he said. "Just for tonight. You can decide what comes next tomorrow." The wagon moved slowly along the road, the wheels creaking softly. She sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap, staring ahead. The cowboy held the reins, giving her space. He did not ask questions. He did not offer comfort he could not give. His silence felt steady, and she was grateful for it. As they left the town behind, the land opened wide. Fields stretched out under the sky, broken only by fences and distant trees. This was the land her husband had spoken of, the place he believed would give them a future. Seeing it now felt both painful and strange, like walking through someone else's dream. They reached a small house set back from the road. It was plain, built strong rather than pretty. A barn stood nearby, and the smell of hay filled the air. The cowboy helped her down from the wagon and carried her suitcase inside. The house was quiet and clean. A lamp sat on the table, already lit. She realized he must have prepared for her arrival, not knowing how different this meeting would be. "You can have the bed," he said. I'll sleep out back." She cried for the husband she barely knew and the life she would never have. She cried for herself, standing alone in a place that was never meant to be hers this way. Outside, the cowboy tended to his chores quietly. He did not listen at the door. He did not interrupt her grief. He understood that some pain needed privacy. When night fell, the house grew still. She lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. The wind against the walls, the distant call of an animal. Her thoughts moved in circles she could not stop. By morning, exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep. She woke to soft light and the smell of something warm cooking. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned, heavy and clear. She sat up slowly and dressed, her movements careful as if sudden motion might break her. When she stepped into the main room, the cowboy looked up from the stove. "Good morning," he said. She nodded. "Thank you for last night." The food was simple, but it filled the empty space in her stomach. When they finished, she took a breath. "I should leave," she said. "I can find work somewhere." "Stay as long as you need." Days passed slowly at first, each one blending into the next. She woke early, not because she wanted to, but because her mind would not let her sleep long. The quiet of the house felt heavy in the mornings. She often sat on the edge of the bed for a while, listening to the sounds outside, reminding herself where she was. The cowboy never pushed her to talk. He spoke when there was something useful to say and stayed silent when there was not. After breakfast, he went about his work as if her presence was natural, not an inconvenience. That helped more than he knew. She did not feel like a burden. She felt like someone who simply existed there. On the third day, she offered to help. "I don't want to just sit," she said, standing awkwardly near the door. "I can do things." When her body was busy, her heart hurt a little less. As the days turned into weeks, her strength returned slowly. The work became part of her routine. She learned when to rest and when to push herself. Some days were easier than others. Some days, a small thing, a word, a sound, a memory, would pull her back into grief without warning. On those days, she worked harder, letting exhaustion quiet the pain. The cowboy noticed, but he did not comment. He had lived long enough to know that healing did not follow a straight path. At night, they ate together at the table. The lamp cast soft light across the room. Sometimes they talked about the land, the weather, the work ahead. Other times they ate in silence. Neither felt the need to fill the space with words. That silence became a kind of understanding. She learned small details about him without asking. He rose before the sun. He cared for his animals with patience. He fixed things instead of replacing them. He listened more than he spoke. There was steadiness in everything he did, as if the world had tested him many times and he had learned how to stand without breaking. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sky turn orange and gold, she spoke about her husband for the first time. "He believed this place would give us a good life," she said quietly. The cowboy nodded. "He worked hard. He talked about you often." Some greeted her kindly. Others watched from a distance, unsure what to think. She felt their eyes on her sometimes, measuring, guessing. She learned to ignore it. Life was hard enough without worrying about opinions that did not feed her or shelter her. She earned her place through work. The cowboy never treated her as someone who owed him anything. When she offered to do more, he accepted without praise or refusal. That balance mattered to her. She wanted dignity, not charity. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in. The sky darkened quickly and the wind picked up speed. She was outside hanging clothes when the first drops fell. The rain came hard and fast, soaking her in seconds. She ran toward the house, slipping slightly in the mud. The cowboy reached her just in time to steady her. His grip was firm, careful, respectful. For a brief moment, she felt the warmth of another person holding her up. The feeling startled her more than the storm. They stood there, rain falling around them, both aware of the closeness. He let go at once, stepping back. "You all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said, her voice steady though her heart was not. They went inside without another word. That night she lay awake longer than usual, her thoughts restless. She felt confused by her own reaction. It was not desire, not longing. It was simply the reminder that she was alive, still capable of feeling connection. The realization frightened her. The next morning, she kept her distance. She worked quietly, avoided long looks, spoke only when needed. The cowboy noticed the change but did not comment. He respected space as much as presence. Days later, she found an old box while cleaning a storage room. Inside were a few personal items, letters, small tools, worn gloves. She recognized her husband's handwriting on one of the envelopes. Her hands shook as she opened it. The letter was short. It spoke of plans, of hopes, of a future he believed was waiting. He had written it for her, planning to give it when she arrived. She read it once, then again, tears blurring the words. That night she sat alone with the letter until the lamp burned low. The pain was sharp but different now. It was no longer just loss. It was memory. And memory, though heavy, felt more complete than emptiness. The next day she spoke again. "I found his letter," she said. The cowboy nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" He did not need to be included in her grief to support her through it. Weeks turned into months. The land changed with the season. The air grew cooler. Work shifted but never stopped. She grew stronger, more confident in her movements and decisions. She no longer felt like a visitor. She felt rooted, even if she did not know how long she would stay. One evening she caught herself laughing at something small, a joke about a stubborn animal. The sound surprised her. It was the first real laugh she had allowed herself in a long time. Guilt followed quickly, heavy and sharp. Later that night she spoke of it. "I laughed today," she said quietly. "It felt wrong." "It just means you're still here." By the end of that season, she knew one thing for certain. She had arrived on that train broken and lost. She had expected nothing but an ending. Instead, she found a place where pain was allowed, where kindness did not demand anything in return, and where a stranger's steady presence helped her stand long enough to find herself again. What came next, she did not yet know. But for the first time since stepping onto that platform, the future did not feel like a closed door. The colder months arrived quietly, changing the land day by day. The mornings grew sharp and the nights stretched longer. She learned to wake before the sun, wrapping herself in a shawl before stepping outside. The air felt different now, heavier, as if it carried both endings and promises at the same time. Her hands had grown stronger. Tasks that once felt difficult now felt natural. She moved with purpose, knowing what needed to be done without being told. The work did not erase her pain, but it gave her balance. Each completed task reminded her that she was still capable, still useful, still alive. The cowboy treated her no differently than before. He trusted her judgment and relied on her help. That trust mattered more than praise. It gave her something she had lost on the train platform, a sense of worth. Some evenings they sat by the fire after the day's work was done. The flames flickered softly, casting shadows on the walls. These were the moments when memories crept in most easily. The quiet gave space for thoughts she tried to keep away during the day. One night, she spoke again about her husband. "He would have liked this season," she said softly. "He always said cold air made him feel awake." "That sounds like him." Some people greeted her warmly. Others watched her closely, whispering when they thought she could not hear. She knew what they wondered, why she stayed, what her place was, whether she belonged. Those questions bothered her less than she expected. She had learned that belonging did not always come from approval. Sometimes it came from choosing where to stand. One afternoon, while returning from town, she overheard two women talking. "She should have left by now," one said quietly. "She's not family," said the other. The words stung, even though she had expected them. She kept walking, her face calm, her steps steady. That night she could not sleep. Doubt settled in her chest like a weight. The next morning she finally spoke what had been growing inside her. "People talk," she said while preparing food. "They think I'm in the way." "You staying here doesn't hurt anyone," he said, "and it's not wrong to need time." But hardship had a way of bringing people closer without words. They worked side by side, moving with quiet understanding. Sometimes their hands brushed by accident. Each time they pulled away quickly, not from fear but from respect. She noticed how careful he was around her. He never assumed, never crossed lines. That care made her feel safe, but it also made her think. One evening she sat alone, holding her husband's letter again. She read it slowly, then folded it and placed it back in the box. For the first time she did not cry. Instead, she felt a calm sadness mixed with gratitude. He had existed. He had hoped. That mattered. She realized she had been living between two times, the past she lost and the future she feared. Staying there forever would slowly break her. A few days later she made a decision. "I need to do something on my own," she said at breakfast. "Not leave, just stand on my own feet." That sounds fair. She was no longer staying because she had nowhere else to go. She was staying because she wanted to. The guilt that once followed her laughter faded. She allowed herself small joys again, a warm cup of tea, a shared joke, a peaceful walk at sunset. She still remembered her husband every day, but remembrance no longer felt like a chain. One night as they closed the door against the cold, she stopped. "I need to say something," she said. He waited. "I will always carry my past," she continued. "I don't want it erased, but I don't want it to be the only thing that defines me either. I just know I don't want to live in fear of it anymore." And in that quiet understanding, she felt stronger than she had since stepping off the train. The past no longer held her still, and the future, though uncertain, no longer frightened her. She was ready for whatever came next. Spring arrived slowly, almost carefully, as if the land itself was unsure whether it was allowed to begin again. Snow melted into soft earth, and small signs of life appeared where everything had once looked still. She noticed these changes more than ever before. Each new morning felt like proof that time did not stop for sorrow, even when sorrow felt endless. Her routine settled into something steady and familiar. Some days she worked in town, other days at the ranch. She moved between both worlds with quiet confidence. People no longer looked at her with the same questions in their eyes. She was no longer just the woman who arrived on the train. She had become someone known for her work, her calm nature, and her honesty. The cowboy watched this change without comment. He did not take credit for it. He simply made space for her to grow. That space had mattered more than anything else he could have given. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the hills, they sat outside together. The air was warm, carrying the smell of fresh grass. She felt peaceful in a way that once seemed impossible. "I think I'm ready," she said suddenly. He turned to her. "Ready for what?" "To stop feeling like I owe the past my whole life." Something had shifted, gently and naturally. Days later, she went to the small hill outside town where her husband was buried. She brought no flowers, only herself. She stood there for a long time, speaking softly, not out loud but in her heart. She did not ask for permission to live again. She simply promised to live honestly. When she returned, she felt lighter. That night she spoke with the cowboy again. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. "Not of staying, not of choosing." People noticed, of course. Some smiled, some shook their heads, but neither of them lived for approval. They lived for truth. She never tried to replace the past. She carried it with care, and the cowboy never tried to step into another man's shadow. He stood in his own place, solid and steady. One morning she woke and realized something simple but powerful. She was no longer surviving. She was living. She walked outside, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the sun on her face. The land stretched wide before her, just as it had on the day she arrived. But she was not the same woman now. She had come on a train believing she was stepping into a beginning. Instead, she stepped into loss. And yet, through kindness, patience, and courage, she found a different kind of beginning waiting for her anyway. Not the one she planned, but the one she chose, and that made all the difference.